Welcome to the Wonder Woman Club podcast. We bring you conversations that will inspire, empower, and educate you to thrive both in business and in life. My name is Vash Naidu, and I'm your host, an intuitive fempreneur coach and the founder of the Wonder Woman Club, a global community of phenomenal women doing phenomenal things in the world. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Wonder Woman podcast. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us. Today we have Mandi Pratt, who is a phenomenal guest. She is a safety coach, author, and a speaker, and she has a wonderful story to share with you all. Mandi, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. Tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much, Vash, for having me here. It's an honor. So I do help women learn how to be safe. I myself have a crazy life story in which I needed to quickly learn how to defend myself and my young son. And that was quite a while ago. That's when my son was 3 and he's now 19 and he's taller and stronger than I am. So much different than back in those days. But back then, I found myself kind of in an emergency situation where it became very dangerous and I needed to learn some actionable skills for myself. So basically, when my son was 3, I decided it was time to leave because my former husband had been abusive and I could see this was not going to change. So I decided I did not want to raise my son and continue that cycle of abuse. So we left, and unfortunately, my former husband spiraled down into a very dark, difficult place, and he began a gambling addiction and then began some other crimes which I had no idea about. So I remember coming home and finding a little business card on my front door, and it said robbery unit, coroner's office, and it had FBI on there. And I thought, oh my gosh. I remember feeling my heart just sink into my stomach, thinking, great, he's either in prison again because he had gone to prison just for a short while for stealing within a casino. So I thought, okay, it's either that or he may, not be with us anymore. And he had threatened suicide before, so it was a plausible possibility. So I remember walking back into the home and walking up the stairs and just feeling like, oh my gosh, like I have no idea what I'm going to find out on the other end of that phone, right? So I called them up and they said, yeah, this is the FBI. Are you aware of where your husband has been? And is he still your husband? And I said, no, we're finalizing a divorce. And they said, well, that's a really good thing because you'd be in a lot of trouble. And I was so clueless and so naive. Yeah. And they had said, we've been searching for him for the past 6 to 9 months because he was wanted for bank robbery. And I was like, excuse me? And they said, yeah, like quite a few, like 20. And I was just so stunned and kind of mad at myself because I didn't know, And so it was at that point where I started feeling like, oh my gosh, okay, so here we are where, I did have a restraining order and he would still show up at my house knocking on the door and different things like that. And he did not heed that. Well, now here we are with a criminal element coming into this, into our lives. So I thought, all right, this is time for me to do something because I felt so trapped and like helpless, and even the times when I had called the police before, like when he would show up on our doorstep and things like that, it took a while, right? So it took sometimes 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I even had an instance where he was trying to break into our home to take my son. And the police took 20 minutes. And it's because we were kind of out. The home that we were at was kind of out and about. But still, like that's a ridiculously long amount of time. And you never know what other calls they have, right? Like on the weekends, especially, it takes them a while sometimes. So I just thought, you know what? It's up to me to be, to keep us safe. I realize that now, I can't always have a dog with us or my dad or, the police aren't going to show up like right when I need them usually. So it's time for me to step it up. So I found somebody who was very skilled and a very high level expert. And so I trained with him and just did like a little bit at a time, and took baby steps. And yes, it was scary in the beginning. And that's what I found, like when women want to learn self-defense, it's so nice to learn from a woman because for me, I know like this guy was great, but it was also really intimidating because he trains police, he trains military, and here comes this mom, who was totally clueless. But he was nice, and he taught me, and I took other workshops, like in-person workshops also. and just did the best I could to learn one step at a time, to now I really feel like I can handle myself. So even though I am over 40 and I'm not, I don't have a black belt, I'm not super strong or whatever, but I feel like I have a lot of options that are practical ways for me to be able to stay out of a situation, to avoid it. And then if I did get into a situation, I know what to do. So now what I've done is taken everything that I've learned and try to help other women, because I will never, ever, ever forget what that felt like to be so like trapped and helpless. I did not want to feel that way. And I don't want any other women to feel that way too. So that's what I do now, is help other women.
Wow, that is incredible. Even from the point of when you started just talking about being in a domestic abusive relationship, that in itself is overwhelming in so many different ways, because it's not only you as a woman, it's you as a mother and also as a child going through something like that. And then to find out that this person had continued the betrayal and the deceit and to the level of being criminal, that it's terrifying, because it's not, the person doesn't have the sense of fear by committing those crimes as well. It's different when it's domestic abuse because it's a one-on-one thing, but they're going out in the public and they know they're committing a crime. So even the law was not something that scared this person. And then for you to find that outlet, because it's not just having the courage to go and protect yourself, it's also that outlet so you could actually deal with your feelings in that space as well, to know that, because living in that sense of fear would have been horrendous, because you now know this person is not afraid to just show up at your door, is not afraid to break in or do anything of that nature. And so how are you going to stand up to this person? It's just incredible, and I commend you on where you've come to and what you've done in your life. And like you said, your child was like 3 years old, and now he's almost entering manhood in a few years. And I think that journey of being able to be that strong is something that he would probably, going into his adulthood as a man, would appreciate, having a strong woman who's capable and also respecting women to a very different degree. So it's changing that generational mindset and belief pattern, which I think is so important as well. Mm-hmm. I do want to go into your story a little bit more, because I think it's so important to share the experience we've had and how we got through something, because I think there'd be people out there that are listening that would potentially feel similar things, or might even be in a similar situation, and they don't know how to get out of it. And I think, from that moment of recognizing, and a lot of the times, and I know personally from being in abusive and toxic relationships, a lot of the times people are like, how did you not know? How did you not see? And it's those kind of things. And I think, that question you said to yourself, how you asked yourself, how did I not know he was doing this? And I just want to go back to that point of, it isn't your fault, because I think that's the other thing. You try to take that blame on, and it isn't actually your fault. So how did you start coping with those kind of thoughts, to shifting into a different perspective?
Right. That's a good question. So again, it was just baby steps, and it was, I got a lot of counseling. I remember too, even just trying to make myself better, I would listen to, this is going to date me because this was a long time ago, but I would listen to cassette tapes on my Walkman while I would walk my son, and listen to these counselors, Cloud and Townsend, and they talk about boundaries, and I listen to them a lot. And I'm also a person of faith, so I read the Bible, and I was reading that a lot too, and just really into helping myself become a better person. And it was also realizing, that, like you said, it's important to raise our next generation up, in a healthy environment as best we can. And I had seen with my former husband, he did not really have a good childhood, so I can see how that cycle just kept happening and happening. And I had decided, no, like, it stops here. I don't care what it takes. Like, we're getting out. And I think that's when you come to that point of change where you realize your options, and you realize you don't have any good options, right? And so I remember thinking, and a lot of women don't leave because of money. And I remember thinking, you know what, if I need to live in my car, then that's what it's going to be, because I want peace. I want peace for my life, And a lot of his abuse was emotional abuse. There was some physical too, but a lot of it was emotional. So like, you feel like you're going crazy, and you lose yourself. And so I remember it took a while to figure out again who I was and try to get back to that core, But again, it was just baby step after baby step and just trying to do the best I could. And, sometimes we don't, you can't beat yourself up, because it's like you only know what you know when you know it, right? So if we get stuck in the past, we'll get stuck in depression. If we get stuck in the future, we'll get stuck in anxiety. So it's like you just have to live, in today and just do the best you can. And yeah, I mean, I made mistakes, and I'm gonna make mistakes, but it's like you just keep going forward in the way you think you should, and you just kind of, do the best you can. And then as you keep going, you don't forget to look back, because it's like you look back and you're like, okay, oh my gosh, like I made it this far. I know I can keep going, right? So that gives you hope, I think, to remember, like, just even the little steps, hey, like I don't live with him anymore. Oh my gosh, like I made it,
Yeah.
And yeah, life's still rough, but like I'm on the right path. So yeah, I think that's what helped me get through that. And then of course, like I mentioned, getting a mentor to help me with the self-defense. And a silver lining of that was, once I learned self-defense and I learned how to be more aware and prepared, that really gave me confidence. And I wasn't really expecting that. I was always a shy person, kind of naive, but when I started learning that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, I feel better, and of course, as women, I think we always struggle, most of us always struggle with confidence. And I still do sometimes, to be honest, but confidence in being able to protect myself is strong for me now. And so that helps when you get that with the rest of your life too, I think. And it's just realizing, like, okay, I did some tough things, like, so I can do this next thing, right?
Yes.
So that's what's helped me.
That's definitely, like, so many gems in that, in just the journey to how you've gotten to where you've gotten to. And I think the important thing is that you mentioned is, we don't know at times certain things, and we don't have information. So we can't put ourselves in a situation of blaming ourselves or holding us to a high level of accountability when we didn't even have the information. And I think we can be our own worst enemy, right? We can kick ourselves so hard. We don't need enemies, because we can be that enemy for ourselves. And for those that are in those circumstances, is to recognize where you are, and whatever you learn now is the information you need right now, and act upon that, and keep acting upon that. And as you keep moving into those spaces, and it's the next right move, we might not know 10 moves, but we know the next right move, and then it eventually starts to unfold for you.
Exactly.
I love what you've shared, and I think it's so important, because we still hear it today. There's so many of these cases still ongoing, and women are struggling, and men. We've also had men who are going through this, that are struggling to move away from abusive relationships for a variety of different reasons. And one of them is that feeling afraid of what would happen if they did afterwards, because this person has so much power in their lives, and how they make them feel, and how they treat them, and what they do to them on a physical level as well, not just emotional, mental, and spiritually. There's all those variations of abuse. For you, going and finding this mentor was obviously such a critical point for you. And what was that, what made you think that that's the person, that's what I need right now? It could have been get a gun, right? It could have been something like that. But what was this direction? Because I'm someone that uses guns. I grew up in South Africa. That's something we're aware of. But it's something that you could just say, well, if I had that, I'd feel safer, right? But for you, it took a different route. So what was that kind of decisioning in taking that decision?
So luckily, I knew of this person because this person was a family friend. So I knew I could trust him, and I knew of his high level, skill. So that was definitely helpful. But I had also done some other research and found another very intensive in-person workshop, like a weekend workshop at a college nearby. And so that was helpful as well. But hopefully that answers your question.
No, that's really good. And so what was this journey of becoming aware and prepared? How did this self-defense and safety work start?
So yeah, it just started with me wanting to, know how to protect myself and my son. And then I started realizing, you know what? Oh my gosh, like this is information that all women should know, because so much of it is prevention, right? And it's being aware of our surroundings and trusting our intuition, and trying to stay away from trouble. So I had learned that, and then I was like, that would be so cool to like put all this together into a woman friendly space, where I've taken things that are most important to us as women, and put that together, and then put it into an online course, and just be able to help others. And I remember, learning from him, it was cool, but because he wasn't a woman, like he didn't really know much about like our purse. Like I did also learn gun training because of my situation was so gnarly. So I did learn that. But it was just, it's different, I think, to learn from a woman because we know of, different ways we dress and different tools we can carry and that sort of thing. So yeah, that was key for me. So I just love helping other women be able to like feel better, and stop feeling so vulnerable. And it's not just people that have gnarly situations like I did, but just women who, might be concerned about their safety, and especially those of us who have teenage daughters or nieces, I have some young people I care about that have had some things happen to them. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like we need to like really, really educate them. And I really wish somebody would have educated me, not just about self-defense, but also about boundaries and emotional abuse. I didn't really know that much about it, so I wish I would have. But I think once you understand more of that, then you can see it, you can spot it, and like, oh my gosh, like that's not right, right? So I'm just kind of on a mission to help other women, and then just help our young ones too, as a whole, and then also not just girls, but like helping our boys and helping them understand how to help, their girlfriends or whomever, sisters, stay safe, and just kind of be an ally to them. So yeah,
that's super, super important too, because there are a lot of men that are allies, but they also don't have the knowledge on how to communicate or how to support or how to help. And I think that's really, really crucial. And the work you're doing is phenomenal, and we need so much more of it, because like you said, it's not just when someone might be in an abusive relationship. The other day I was walking and it was a little bit dodgy, and I was like, I could sense some people behind me, and then I took my keys and I put it through my finger, just so that I knew that if anything, like, I had something that I could do. But it's things like that like, as young girls growing up, they don't have that awareness to think that there might be danger around as well. And for me, this awareness came from me growing up in Africa. It didn't come, like I live in Scotland at the moment, it didn't come from living here. And that kind of like sense of danger is present, whereby in countries that you don't see it every day, you're very unaware. You could have your earpods in and you could be running and just not even thinking someone might attack you, So I think those are the kind of things we really need to educate young girls, women, and young men as well. I think, you touched on your program that you developed, and I would love for you to share what are those key areas that women should pay attention to, because I think if we can, educate now through this, it would be amazing. So tell us, what are those key points?
Sure. So with the online course, there's 4 different modules in it. So the first one is all about situational awareness, which just means being aware of your surroundings and paying attention. And I made that first because I feel like that is the most important thing. And then the second one is my favorite because it's about being aware when you're out and about. So it's about driving, and like for us in California, we're in our cars a lot. So it's about just simple tips and tricks with driving and with out while you're shopping and while you're traveling, different things like that. And then the third
Do you want to
module.
share a little bit? Sorry, do you want to share a little bit about what those tips and tricks are for each of those modules? So even those that are listening can say, oh yeah, if that was me in this situation, I wouldn't see it this way, or I wouldn't think of it this way.
Yeah. So let me back up. So the first one is about, being aware of our surroundings. And so I in fact, I just did a class for a small group, and I showed them 2 different pictures. So there was one of a woman who was leaning against the tree, looking down at her phone, and she had her hands full and her legs were kind of, leaning against the tree. And then I showed a different picture, and the woman is walking, looking very confident with her eyes looking straight towards, where she's walking. And she has her purse on over her shoulder, but nothing's in her hands. And she looks confident. So there's a huge difference in that. So when criminals look for who they're going to go after, they don't want a fight. They're looking for somebody who looks like they're not paying attention. So they're just looking at their phone, they're distracted. They might look a little bit weaker than somebody else. So it's important to look confident and to be paying attention. And I guess that would be the key thing with being aware of our surroundings. And then the second, where I was talking about being safe while you're out and about, again, it's being aware. And then it's just thinking ahead. So things like when you're walking back to your car, you are noticing, if there's any weird papers on it that somebody's stuck on it, or anybody hanging around that looks out of place. Things like that. And then there's so many tips, so I'm like trying to
Yeah.
pare it down as quickly as I can.
And I don't want you to share the whole course, but I think some useful tips would be helpful
Yeah,
to people right now.
for sure.
Yeah.
And then, you know, for people who don't have a car, like I'm thinking of somebody in like New York City or something. There's tips in there for traveling, and then for just being out and about, you know, you're just aware, and you can use paying attention to reflections. So if you're in the subway or something, you can look at reflections, or you can use your phone, pretend like you're taking a selfie and be able to see behind you. And then the third module was about how to keep your home and property safe. So, you know, everybody's in different circumstances. Here I am in California, you're in Scotland. So everybody's in different circumstances. But here, the police say that they really love it when people use those videos like outside your door. There's Google Nest or the Ring doorbells. That's nice to have. And you know, just being sure that you don't advertise anything outside of your home. Like if you just got this huge TV, like don't leave the box out for the week until the trash man comes by, you know.
Yeah.
And then keeping your appearance of your homes very clear, clean, and simple. So you don't have a bunch of bushes that are kind of blocking the front door, that kind of thing. And then the last module of my course is oh my gosh, it's so near and dear to my heart because it's about keeping our loved ones safe. So it's about when you're out with kids, some different tips you can do to make sure that they stay safe. And it's talking to them about safety, but in a fun way, like even with some games. So it's not like, ooh, you know, be wary of strangers, and like you don't want to freak them out, right?
Yeah.
And you want them to learn in a fun way because we learn easier when we're having fun, I think. So and then some things for kids to stay safe at school, and even dating resources. At the end, we talk about some dating resources that I wish I would have had. So things like that. And then there's bonus sections in the course too, where I talk about different tools that I like to use. And by the way, I did write an ebook on pepper spray because when I was learning everything that I was learning, I kept hearing different things about pepper spray. Like, does it help? Does it not help? You know, and what the heck, like, what is it? And how do I use it? You know, because I bought it and then I don't know, it kind of felt intimidating. Like, how do I spray it? Or, you know, how far does it go? So I consulted with a couple different experts, like a former detective and then a doctor. And put together all the info that I found on it and made it into a little ebook. And then it's on Amazon Kindle, or it's a free download off of my website. So it's called 2 Things to Know Before Buying Pepper Spray. Do this first. So people that have read it have said that it's been helpful. So I'm glad to, you know, to share that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Those tips are really, really useful and valuable. And I think one of the other things that I would say as well is like social media as well, is don't tag yourself in places.
Right.
Like, you know, when you're not home, don't tag yourself that you're out and about, because that's, you know, people are being invited to break in, you know, things like
it's
that.
Like, hi, I'm not home.
And even when you are at a place, if someone is watching you or stalking you or things like that, tagging where you are is not like safe. Like I don't tag myself. If I post anything, it's always like a day or a month or months later when it happened, because I forget anyway, but I just don't tag in at that time because I think it's so important. You know, there's so much data online that is harnessed from everything we do, and we need to do, you know, the security of our data is massive. But yeah, that's a whole other topic. But thank you so much for sharing those tips, and those are so useful. And I'll tell you a funny story as well. When I first came to the UK, I actually traveled with pepper spray in my bag because I carried pepper spray with me. And when I landed at Heathrow Airport, I got stopped because I had pepper spray. And I didn't think there was anything wrong with that because that was like normal for me. And then they asked me, like, you know, what is this? And I said, it's pepper spray. And they were like, do you know what it does? And I was like, yeah, it's to protect myself, you know. And they were like, you're not allowed to carry this. And I was like, thank God. It was, you know, they weren't horrible to me and they let me through and things like that. But that was my experience. And at that time, you know, that was my first international flight and things like that as well. And I was actually coming to live in the UK at that time as well. And I was like terrified. And at first I was like, what's the big deal? I don't get it. And then after they had explained, I was like, oh, crap. You know, so I think I did learn my lesson about pepper spray as well. So in the UK, you don't necessarily carry things like that. So yeah, it's an interesting story. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing what you're doing and And I love the work that you're doing, and I think it's so important, and we want to support you as much as we can at the Wonder Woman Club. So, so yeah, if there's any way we can support you and help you, do let us know as well, because this is
Thank you.
really important work.
Thank you so
But
much.
you're welcome, and I just want to thank you for such a amazing, story, as well as being so open and vulnerable with us and sharing all your experience. And thank you for your time on the podcast. And I'm sure, no doubt, we'll chat to you again and maybe go into more detail about some other topics in the future. That would be amazing. But
Sure.
thank you for being our guest today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.